why didn't you apologize to Chris in your acceptance speech? I was fogged out by that point. It's all fuzzy. I've reached out to Chris, and the message that came back is that he's not ready to talk, and when he is, he will reach out. So I will say to you, Chris, I apologize to you. My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm here whenever you're ready to talk.
All right. Chase, you want to go first?
Sure. So he kind of reads the message in a really clinical way. And I think this is potentially reducing the feeling of accusatory speech internally, not necessarily shaping a narrative for us. And this is my opinion, as is this entire video, our opinions. But he's very stiff here. And I think this is potentially anger or resistance. We see his lip tightening during this initial response. We see his lips get really tight there, which is usually resistance. And during this discussion about waiting for Chris to reach out, we see this kind of hand gesture and then some more pacifying or adapting with the thumbs here. You'll see that throughout. And during the apologizing gesture, there's this knife hand that comes out. And we're seeing that right at discussing the message that came in from Chris. And when he says my behavior, this is the farthest upward his lip goes for the entire video. And this might suggest some kind of disgust or disagreement. You can decide what he's disgusted with or disagreeing with. And the self-soothing behavior, you're going to see a whole lot of. The tension in the lips based on previous interviews, good thing we have a lot of videos of him to go back and look at, suggests that there's some withholding there. But I don't think this is an indicator of deception here. It's probably a disagreement with timing, format, publicity. He was likely asked to do this by a production management team or somebody who is heavily invested, probably financially or socially, in his image. That's all I got there. Scott, what do you got?
All right. I think this is a pretty odd place for him to be doing an apology like this. There's so much going on in the room. It's distracting. I don't get that. I don't know. I'm sure Mark's got something to say about the psychology behind all that, but there's so much going on in there. The colors he's wearing are these drab colors. The whole room there's so much going on in there. I don't know if it's to distract or to make it look like he's distracted or got a lot going on or whatever. We see him using, when he's sitting there before he starts asking the question that supposedly people have asked, we see that adapter, his hands squishing together like that a little bit. His behavior is odd. His diction is so good. If you turn the sound off, you'll know what he's saying because he uses his whole mouth. It's almost, it's over the top. It's a little bit too much. So I'm under the impression he may be under some kind of medication or something, maybe on something like that to help calm him down, or maybe he's been on something like that since the whole thing happened. But let's pay attention to that as we go through these. Let's pay attention to his diction, his eyebrow movement, and just his tone in general, because it's pretty solid all the way through, and we don't see much movement up in that brow, which is kind of odd as well. He's so pronounced when he's reading the question that he looks angry at points. I'm not seeing true anger in there, but I'm seeing what looks like, I think it's just because the way he's shaping his mouth to say the words perfectly, that he looks like he's angry. I think there are a lot of edits in this, as there probably should be, but they try to make it look like there aren't, because at one point his hands will be here, then they'll be down to his sides when it cuts to the next picture or the next shot of him. And when he says, when he's talking about Chris trying to reach out to him, he says, when he will reach out. It's when he does that little adapter there, that little scratch and the and all that stuff. And I don't think I'm not seeing a lot of emotion. We may be seeing sadness or whatever, but it seems very somber and just almost a flat line of emotion at that point. And Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I agree, Scott. It's heavily produced for an internet apology. It's not the usual kind of iPhone job that often people put out. It's got some classic tropes in there. He's in white. It's a very white room. So there is that sense of purity going on there. There's some nice images, one of which you sent me, Scott, which is the book on his table, an art book by El Anatsui. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Ghanese artist who turns what we would usually ascribed to being junk, bits of plastic, bottle tops, into quite epic sculptures. So there's this idea of transforming the kind of the garbage into something quite new and quite beautiful. And there he is in this pristine stuff. He's now, to your point, Chase, he's got his Westbrook cap on. Westbrook is the kind of holding company that he and his ex-wife, and there are other shareholders as well, and they own some quite important collateral properties. And so this is as much, I would say, an apology that's going out to us, the general public, as it is an apology that's going to hit the industry. So well-produced industry apology as well as an internet apology going on. We've got up in the background there, the world is sick, love is the cure. Well, that's a really nice truism. I mean, is it sick? I mean, maybe not. Is love the cure? Possibly not. But it sounds pretty good. It looks pretty good. Great truism, great kind of motivational poster there up on the wall, just in case we need something to latch onto, which isn't him and what he might have done wrong. And I think that's the point of that, either consciously or unconsciously. Look, here's what happens in film production. Some of it is super conscious, and we hope it's usually super conscious. And some of it is kind of subconscious and unconscious, and just the work of artists doing what they feel is the right thing at the time. It's interesting, before this particular moment, if you watch the whole video, we have a voiceover of just heavy sighs from Smith, just breathing. So it's overly produced to give us this framework of heavy emotion before we even see him. This breathing of sorrow and depression even before we see him. So it's being framed beautifully for us. We see him adapting with his thumbs, and you're right, Scott, this changes from time to time. There's some big edits in there. Look, the main thing for me in terms of what his behavior is saying is, he says, I was fogged out, it's all fuzzy to that question. So he avoids it. It's that kind of, I don't quite remember why I did what I did. We're going to hear a different story a bit later on that doesn't quite match with that. So that's going to be interesting. I think what he's doing is avoiding the true feelings here as to why he chose to say what he said. And I think we're going to see him avoid the true feelings because they won't play that well for the audience, and we as the audience in the industry need to know that he has changed his personality a little bit on this. Whether he has or not, that's a different thing. He deflects that ball of a question and he knocks it very clearly into Chris Rock's court and kind of goes, hey, it's kind of up to him now to contact me. I've done my bit. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, agreed. You've covered most of it. I think the big one is what you said last, Mark. He doesn't answer the question at all. He says, okay, I tried to apologize after. He doesn't say I didn't because why? There's not an answer. So he has to just come up with something. He starts off milling his hands. That's an adapter. We say comforting moves. All adapters are comforting moves in some way because you're releasing nervous energy. But that answer where he does the weird lip thing is kind of in his baseline if you go look at him. It's kind of amusement in his upper face, and then that lip thing. I have a really good friend named Darren that I think does exactly that when he's amused before he starts to go back with an answer to people. I see it all the time. If you're watching, Darren, you know who you are. That answer is in his baseline, and that half smile thing is part of his persona. I think he's done it so many times. But he is uncomfortably touches his mouth. You're talking about that, Scott, when he starts to stroke the facial hair. That's an adapter to release nervous energy. And his eyes go down to the right. We associate with emotion when he says, at my behavior. And you see everybody's disgust will look different depending on bone structure, depending on the way your skin and your face is made. But you certainly see disgust, not just in his lips, Chase, I agree with you there, but also in his nose, up around the edges of his nose. You can see a rise in his face. I think he's disgusted with that. He's adapting constantly as he speaks. And one thing that I would point out, Scott, is culture matters. South Jersey, Philly, that over enunciating the way you speak is cultural. Very much part of that culture. I have friends who that mind you, and they're not aggressive. They're just talking to you, but that's the way they talk. I said to them before, if you talk to people where I live that way, you might be in the parking lot rolling around a little bit. So it just depends on culture in some cases. And I think that's part of his upbringing, part of who he is. Maybe that's why he shows his teeth more. The last couple of things I would say is what I see here is regret and apprehension. What's it about? Don't know. Don't know if it's regret about slapping Chris Rock. Is it regret about a relationship with somebody that has gone south as a result of it, about his career? Don't know. But I do see regret. I do see apprehension. That's all I got.
Why didn't you apologize to Chris in your acceptance speech? I was fogged out by that point. It's all fuzzy. I've reached out to Chris, and the message that came back is that he's not ready to talk, and when he is, he will reach out. So I will say to you, Chris, I apologize to you. My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm here whenever you're ready to talk.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.